All right, it's time. We're back once again. We're always back. This is New York Giants Straight Talk on the Believe Network, brought to you by the Mighty FanDuel. Today we have a special guest. We have an enemy in the territory. Well, we're not going to call him an enemy because you know what? For those that are watching the video, he's got a cool Bruce Lee shirt on. For those that are listening on the podcast, he's got a cool Bruce Lee shirt on. So there it is. It's Evan Giddings from San Francisco. Why don't you give us a little background information about what you're doing, Evan, and what you're all about and who you are? Because I know whether you are, but we need a proper introduction besides the fact that you and your partner, Tommy, are on the Believe Network and believe in the 49ers.
Well, most weeks we do. And I appreciate you having us on. And look, I do a lot of work here in the Bay Area. I work for 95.7 The Game, which is actually the Warriors flagship station. So I get to dip a bit into the Niners waters with my broadcast partner, Lorenzo Neal, who's nearly 2 decades as a fullback in the NFL every single Sunday morning for our pregame show. And then I also host some pre and post for the Warriors side as well. So a lot of Bay Area sports, a lot of fun as of late, and a season that has kind of defied some expectations so far. So while the Niners are 5-3 and certainly did not look like a very good team last week in Houston, I'm happy to talk to you about a matchup that I think is pretty interesting on paper. As many of your listeners may not feel that way, I think this is a closer match than people are giving it credit for.
Right now, my feeling is anytime you're starting Mac Jones at quarterback, there's always a chance. There's always a hope. There's hopium. But he's played well. He's played well in sports. I think I don't want to say defied expectations from what we saw with the Patriots, but he's come in to replace Brock Purdy. I would be remiss if I did not ask this. Any insider Brock Purdy information that we might need to know about?
As far as the turf of whatever field he steps on knows, because that's determining how the toe has responded. It's just been really hard. Like, I honestly, I don't think that Kyle Shanahan even knows. Like, this is an injury that prevents players from practicing, which means you're not going to play. And the moment you do practice, you potentially re-aggravate it. Like, it was reported, and I do know this for a fact, that the Sunday morning before the Atlanta Falcons Sunday night football game, Brock Purdy went through a workout where he had a setback for the toe. And so where he was supposed to be on track to play week 8 at Houston, that no longer was a possibility because of what happened the prior Sunday. So it's been a lot of that kind of stuff that's leaked out slowly, and we've been hearing murmurs of that's prevented him from getting on the field. So it's almost been impossible to project when he's going to come back. But like you mentioned, fortunately, Mac Jones is 4-2 as a starter, and a lot of people feel like he's good enough to help them get to 5-2 as a starter. So they're blessed to have the best backup, I think, right now in football. And as a result, Brock Purdy's kind of on the back burner.
In the Bay Area, when Purdy went down and you have Mac Jones, we know the lineage of Mac Jones from being drafted to where he ended up with the 49ers. We're not going to get into that because we all know about that. But when Giant fans, we're hopefully out of the quarterback dearth right now with Jackson Dart. When we had Daniel Jones, we had Tommy DeVito, and when Jones went down, we went to DeVito, and the whole world ended. But it kind of didn't. I mean, what was your thought process with, like, oh my God, Mac Jones is now for an extended period of time going to be the signal caller for the 49ers?
I didn't think it was good. I thought Mac Jones was a solid quarterback and clearly helped lead his team to the playoffs in his rookie season in New England. I thought that he would benefit from having someone like Kendrick Bourne already on the roster because that's who he was throwing passes to in New England. But anytime you have your backup quarterback, you're never feeling confident. And it didn't matter how good you are. Well, I guess unless you have Joe Flacco, apparently. But I think that the backup quarterback is a death sentence in a lot of locker rooms. But the one thing that the 49ers do have that other teams don't is Kyle Shanahan. And for all of his shortcomings in big games and Super Bowls, he has been a quarterback whisperer. And you don't have to look very far to see the kinds of guys and careers that he's resurrected. I think that's why Mac Jones not only wanted to sign with San Francisco this summer, but wanted to sign a 2-year deal. And I think he wanted to be here in case Brock Purdy got hurt because he could play his best football with Kyle Shanahan, who got Sam Darnold on the right track, who's now a $100 million man, has gotten results with his backups. I think his last 24 games with a backup quarterback, he's 17-7. So Kyle Shanahan's been winning games with guys not under center as QB1s for his entire career as a head coach. and nothing has changed really with Mac Jones. So do I think that Mac Jones is better than Brock Purdy? Do I think he's the quarterback of the future for the Niners? Absolutely not. But with Kyle Shanahan, we're starting to learn, and I think should have learned by now, anything's possible with that guy calling plays.
You mentioned your head coach, and he has had an interesting career in the Bay Area. And I was talking to someone about Mike Tomlin the other day, and Mike Tomlin, all he does in Pittsburgh is win and go to the playoffs and go to the play. But his playoff success after the Super Bowls has not, Mike Tomlin that is, has not been that great. So there's always this uproar. There's always these calls, these bellows for Tomlin to get fired in Pittsburgh, even though you look at his record, you look at what he's done, and you're like, well, this guy's accomplished so much. While it may not show completely in the playoffs, but he's really done so much to get there. Does Kyle Shanahan kind of have that feel in the Bay Area, or is the Bay Area still rallying around him? Because like I said, in Pittsburgh, it's totally different. You talk to people on the Steelers. Mike Tomlin is the worst coach in the history of their franchise outside of when Chuck Noll went downhill. I mean, is there anything like that in San Francisco, or does he still have the support of the fan base?
I think anybody that watched the 49ers in the 80s and the 90s doesn't give Kyle Shanahan a pass. But I think, like myself, I was born in the mid-90s, the 30s and somethings. I think they're on board with Kyle Shanahan because it's kind of been the best that we've seen. Like Jim Harbaugh was an amazing head coach for this franchise, but as you've seen along many stops, he's eventually going to run someone into the ground, and he's going to make somebody pissed off. And in this case, it just so happened to be the owner. Kyle Shanahan has worked perfectly here, hand in hand with the front office and ownership since he's gotten to San Francisco. So I think that the one thing that is, you like you talked about the interesting career for Shanahan, and it's like if he never wins a Super Bowl as a head coach, he's going to be the most fascinating case study for quote unquote successful head coaches, I believe, maybe in the history of football, because every time he's gotten to the playoffs, he's not only won a game, he's won multiple playoff games. It's not like the Tomlin factor of getting there and then flaming out. Every time Kyle Shanahan has got a 49ers team to the playoffs, they have made the NFC Championship or the Super Bowl. And while I understand that in the big game, he's 0-2, and if you want to give him credit for, or take away credit for the Falcons, he's 0-3, but he's still gotten there. And he's gotten there with Jimmy Garoppolo. He's gotten there with Brock Purdy, who I believe is a good quarterback, but certainly not among the elite. And he's now winning games with someone like Mac Jones. So where Kyle Shanahan, I think, is in that between the rock and the hard places, people don't know where to place him because he's someone who is an automatic floor raiser. But in the brightest, biggest moments, he and his teams have not come through. And unfortunately, that's a blemish on his resume. So I think that Kyle Shanahan has the support of younger fans who haven't seen the greatest and the best moments in 49ers history. But you talk to anybody that watched those Montana and Young teams, that watched Walsh and Seifert, and anybody that calls Kyle Shanahan a genius, to them is sipping something, and we don't really know what's in their cup, because Walsh was a genius, and Kyle Shanahan right now does not deserve that title yet.
I'm an old guy, so I remember the 49ers days. I remember the Walsh days. I know the story about how Phil Simms might have been a 49er if the Giants didn't reach up in the first round and grab him. But I also remember the Jim Burt hit and the Lawrence Taylor interception for a touchdown. I also remember the fumble in 90, also caused by Lawrence Taylor. But we're not going to get into that because, that's old news. New news this Sunday, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, New York Football Giants and the 49ers at MetLife. If you go over to the mighty FanDuel right now, the 49ers at home, on the road are favorites over the Giants. And that, of course, that is FanDuel.com, the number one sports book. We always say in the land, but all in America. I take a look at this and I laugh because the Giants, all season long, in a 2-6 team, you should never be favored. I mean, just because of the fact that we have been so atrocious and we've lost in so many fun ways, these first 8 weeks, it's kind of amazing. Give us a breakdown or an assessment of, outside of just Mac Jones, the 49ers offense, because you have Christian McCaffrey, and I think you have a player on your team in Brian Robinson Jr., who to me is an underrated asset for this game, because when he was with the Washington Commanders, he played extremely well against the Giants. And you have a Giant defense who gives up yards in the bunches. We gave up 272 yards on 33 carries last week against Philadelphia, where I believe we're 31st in the league in reference to yards allowed against in the rush. But if you are the offensive coordinator, let's say, what is your game plan? What is your philosophy? And what can Giant fans expect to see against the vaunted Giant defense?
I think you're going to see a heavy dose of Christian McCaffrey because that's the 49ers offense. Like with all due respect to some of the other playmakers they have right now, the 49ers offense goes as number 23 does. And I think the Sunday Night Football game 2 weeks ago compared to last weekend in Houston is a prime example of what happens when Christian McCaffrey is well and when Christian McCaffrey is hell. They either win the game or they lose the game. And to me, I think that keeping the ball in the hands of McCaffrey, especially against a rush defense, like you mentioned for the Giants, that has not been great this year, that's what Kyle Shanahan also just philosophically wants to do. If he can run it or throw it 40 times in a game, he will choose the former over the latter every single day of the week. And they haven't been able to really win a lot this year at the line of scrimmage. I think they're 27th in rush block win rate. And that's been the biggest reason why their offense, to me, hasn't taken off. So this is one of those games that I think they're going to be able to run the ball, and they will try to. And to me, if I'm looking at the Giants, yes, stopping the run is first and foremost. But also I would say a quick start is important against this 49ers team because Kyle Shanahan is somebody that when he gets a lead, he's able to keep the game in script. For someone like Mac Jones, that's of the utmost importance. Against the Rams a few weeks ago on Thursday night, they had 2 opening drives of which 10 plays, ate up time, walked down, got touchdowns, used that 14-point lead to eventually win an overtime against a division foe. You saw last week against Houston when the Texans scored first, when the Texans dictated terms, the Niners really, really struggled. And I know that the Houston defense is much different, but I think that the Giants have a far better offense than the Houston Texans do, who still managed to put up nearly 30 points on the Niners D. So I think that this is a game that if I'm the Niners, if I'm a Giants fan looking at what the Niners do, expect to see a lot on the ground. And if that doesn't happen, I do think the Giants have a chance to win this football game.
I'm going to give you guys a hint. And I always get in trouble because people I'll give I played in college. I worked in the pros, and I always give people my philosophy on each team how to beat the Giants. And every week's just for like the last 4 years, I've been correct. Don't do anything but run the ball. Seriously. I mean, if I keep telling people, if I'm the 49ers, if I'm anyone, I'm running the ball 497 times versus this Giant defense. Cause until they can prove that they can stop the run, there's really no need or no necessity. You have a wide receiver on your team, Mr. Jennings, who has been the subject of trade rumors, and one of the teams that he was linked to was the Giants. And I know Kyle Shanahan came out the other day I think it was yesterday, and kind of spoke about his thought process in trading Jennings. Can you expand a little bit on that for Giant fans?
Yeah, Jauan Jennings is a player that, look, every year there's contract negotiations and they leak later into the summer. I think it puts the player at a disadvantage. There's less time in practice. There's less training camp reps. You're putting your body in a position to get hurt, which is what happened to Jauan Jennings. And you're not locked in. Where I thought Jauan was their number one receiver last year. And yes, Ayuk went down. Guys were getting hurt all around. But this year he's had an opportunity again because of the injuries to Ricky Pearsall, who's also not going to be available on Sunday with a knee injury, to step up and be that number one receiver again. I think the summer and the lack of practice and training camp really has impacted him, along with the fact that he's on a 1-year deal. I wouldn't be surprised if the Niners, if they lose this game Sunday, they're also looking at a Rams team at home in 2 weeks from now, right before the trade deadline. I don't think that it's out of the realm of possibility for them to deal Jauan Jennings, who, by my money, is a solid possession receiver, will fight for every yard, has been third in Jauan. He's been a great third down target for the Niners for the past few seasons. And, oh, by the way, last year was the number one rush blocker at the wide receiver position. So he's not afraid to put his hands on an opposing DB, on a linebacker, and get his helmet into the thick of things. I really like Jauan Jennings. I just think that this season has been marred by a contract negotiation that will next season be done with. He's going to get paid by somebody. And so I would, honestly, if he could stay with San Francisco, I would suggest it for him because I think he's great here. But if you're picking him up, if you're looking for him in a trade, I also think he'd be a good acquisition.
Now, you mentioned the Texans game, and I know a lot of people were, and I know a lot of people I've seen in the newspapers and online that thought that was a little bit of a letdown for the 49ers, but I don't think, I mean, I think the Texans are a lot better than their record. And what the record indicates, their offense with the stars like Nico Collins and everything that CJ Stroud did, their defense, your 49ers defense against that Texans team. What do you think was the biggest issue last Sunday that your defense had in reference to stopping that Texans team?
Getting to the quarterback. I think that's by far and away the most difficult thing to do right now for the 49ers. And we've seen it throughout the year too. When they don't get pressure on quarterbacks, they don't win games. Against Jacksonville in week 3, they had 1 quarterback hit on Trevor Lawrence. They also had 1 quarterback hit last Sunday on CJ Stroud. And it's because of injury, right? Nick Bosa's out for the season with his ACL. Bryce Huff is going to miss a second consecutive game this Sunday with a hamstring injury. And those are the 2 best winners in the line of scrimmage. Like, they just do not have guys. They traded for Keon White from the New England Patriots and sent a 6th-round pick back this week. White doesn't have a sack this year, but it's because they just don't have any bodies on the D line. They do not have edge rushers, and certainly none that right now can put pressure on the quarterback. So, and remember too, for those wondering, all right, well, maybe the Giants don't have a great offensive line, or maybe you don't see it that way. Houston has an awful offensive line. Like, the Texans have not been able to keep CJ Stroud upright the entire season.
A couple of years, actually.
Yeah, exactly. That's been their biggest problem down there. So the Niners still, with all of that, allowed CJ Stroud to sit back and pick them apart to the tune of 320 yards, 2 touchdowns, and was 30 for 39 passing. So I think the biggest issue for their defense is they can't put pressure on a quarterback. And Robert Saleh, no one's feeling sorry for him, but he's going to have to get creative this week. And I think there's going to be a lot more blitzing against the Giants and a young Jackson Dart in hopes of trying to frustrate him and try and force him to make bad decisions.
Listen, no one's going to cry for Robert Saleh here in New York. There will be no tears shed for that, man. You spoke about Jackson Dart. This is only a handful of starts for Mr. Dart. You have a rookie quarterback that you haven't seen before. A lot of the league hasn't seen. Of course, you're gaining more and more film. If you're game planning to stop Jackson Dart, what do you think the philosophy should be for the 49ers?
For stopping Jackson Dart? Well, and this is actually kind of one of the issues I see going into this game. It's got to be making him a passer. Like, I think that, like, caging him the way that they've done in the past, to me, would be the best way to combat him. Unfortunately for Giants fans, but fortunately for 49ers fans, they don't have to worry about Cam Scadabo wrecking shop this upcoming week. And I think that's going to help them as well. But to me, Jackson Dart, when he uses his legs, he is really, really dangerous. You saw that even in his first start against Los Angeles, and a Chargers defense that's much better than the 49ers defense. So I think, to me, turning him into just a passer is going to be where they succeed. And if they can't do that, if they allow him to use his legs, I think it's going to be a long day. So the 49ers defense has had trouble stopping mobile quarterbacks. Even CJ Stroud had a couple of big runs against them on Sunday, but someone like Kyler Murray has really hurt the Niners in years past, even when the Cardinals teams have not been very good. So I just think that trying to contain Jackson Dart's legs as opposed to his arm is probably what Robert Saleh is focused on doing the most on Sunday.
That's interesting because Vic Fangio, of the defense coordinator of the Philadelphia Eagles, pretty much, I think, laid out the game plan for Jackson Dart right now, which is basically just contain him and keep him in the pocket. Yeah. They left a lot of the middle of the field open for him, but if he's not moving left to right, he seems to have a more difficult time reading the entire defense. So I 100% agree with you on that. You mentioned the Rams game, and this is something that we have fallen susceptible to in Giantsdom for the last 10 years. Do you think there is any thought process that potentially the 49ers could be looking ahead to the Ram game?
No, maybe in years past, like when they've had good teams, like in 2023, you saw a 3-game losing streak,
That's
even though
kind of where I was going with that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I think that year was one where they came into the year expecting to be in the NFC Championship or the Super Bowl, honestly. Last year, the wheels fell off, though they had Super Bowl expectations. This year, to me, has been almost like a reset for the 49ers. And it's as much about the choice they made to pay their quarterback, who hasn't been on the field, as it is they let go of Debo Samuel, Charvarius Ward, Malik Collins, Javon Hargrave, Dre Greenlaw, Talanoa Hufanga. Like they got rid of so many dudes that were part of really good teams here in order to strip themselves of cash. And they've turned to now a rookie class of 10 in which 6 to 7 of them have seen significant snaps already in their first year. That to me is a team that is very week to week. And if you're an opposing team, if you're an underdog, if you're a home dog, it's also a group that you can take advantage of because they are so young. They have the second oldest defense. They have the second oldest offense. They have the second youngest defense. So to me, I don't think this is a team that really looks ahead to anyone. I think they've been taking it week by week, and to their credit, that's probably why they're also 5-3, mind you, with a negative scoring differential. Like they're at -4 and still have a plus 500 record. So it's been kind of miraculous, to be honest, what they're kind of doing this year.
At the end of the day, what this is all about is the wins and the losses. So to wrap this up, what is your prediction? Don't forget you're on a Giant channel. So, I mean, I'm just going to let you know, because I already know what my prediction is, because my prediction is always 21-17 Giants, no matter what, no matter who we play. Yeah. Because you know what? One day that score is going to be correct. Evan, with all your knowledge and all your information and all that insight, what do you see this game coming down to? And what do you see the final score being?
Well, if it makes you feel better about my bias, I did pick against the Niners twice this year. I was correct both times.
I was going to ask you that if they won or lost.
Yeah, I picked against them at Tampa, and I picked against them this most recent weekend at Houston. I don't think they lose this game, though, against the Giants. And I think it's what you referenced. It's the fact that the Giants have not been able to stop the run. And when the Niners do run the ball effectively, they're very difficult to beat. I just think that the game script last week was ultimately not in their favor. And this week against a softer defense, Mac Jones is going to have some more time. Christian McCaffrey, who's coming off perhaps his worst game since his rookie season in Carolina, mind you, where he only had 25 yards, I think 40 total scrimmage yards. He's going to have a better performance, and I think they're going to be able to outlast New York. I do believe Dart and the Giants will stay in it, but how about instead of 21-17 Giants, we go 21-17 49ers?
Oh, I like that. I'm not going to call that a cop out because I like that. And people also forget the amount of yards that McCaffrey's had receiving this year. I mean,
he's been a better receiver than rusher
at this point in time. And the Giants secondary may still be without Holland. They still may be without Paulson Adebo. They relied on the rookies, Corey Black and many others in that secondary. And really, we don't have a proficient enough linebacking core outside of Bobby Okereke, who has any ability to cover a running back out of the backfield. So I like I said, if when I got the Giant hat on, it's 21-17 Giants. When I don't have the Giant hat on, don't ask what the score is, because then you'll get the truth. Evan, I appreciate you coming on. Of course, Evan Giddings can be found on the Believe Network and Believe in 49ers. And once again, where else can everyone, besides Believe in 49ers? I definitely want to make sure you speak about that freely. But again, why don't you let us know where everyone else can find you?
Yeah, you can hear myself and Tommy Call on Believe in 49ers. And if you're perusing social media, at Evan A. Giddings, both on Twitter, X, Instagram, TikTok. I work for 95.7 The Game, the Warriors radio flagship here in San Francisco. I am our pre- and post-game host for Warriors, and I host pregame every single Sunday morning with my broadcast partner, Lorenzo Neal, hopefully a future Hall of Fame fullback. So enjoy that. And really, thanks for having me on. I enjoy getting to talk to new people in different markets with different perspectives. So hopefully your listeners out there also enjoyed me.
Well, we greatly appreciate you come on. Again, this is Tim's New York Giants Straight Talk, powered by Online Blake Blue LLC on the Believe Network, brought to you by the Manny FanDuel. And for Tim and Evan, we are out of here.